this should be another episode of By the Numbers, which is a show brought to you by Alphadraft, who is a company who offer a fantasy esports service. I must remind you there, in case you're a member of the Senate or something in America, that is fantasy. It's not real. It's abstraction. It's not actually gambling. I will attest to that. And I don't think it would be in the spirit of America as a country or the concept of America in terms of having states which should be allowed to decide for themselves and not any sort of federal big brother who just takes over and enforces things, much like when they banned all that weed that, I particularly didn't like the way that was done, Monty, 8 years ago, whatever that was. So much like that, I hope this all remains free and clear and that we can, in the true spirit of America, live a free life within our entitlement to, what is that famous quote, Monty? The one about the livelihood or some shit.
I have no idea.
It's a famous quote in American history. Something like, what, you're entitled to... What is it? Let me have a look. I'm going to look this up, actually, because it's a real quote. Is that even a real thing? I can't find it. Whatever. Anyway, this is By the Numbers. But for this one, it's going to be different, because we don't actually have any contests this time. So instead, what we're going to do is an award show for the year. But here's the thing, Monty. Alphadraft should know this. They should really have scouted out, done their homework. I don't share my Skrilla, okay, motherfucker? So I'm going to do an award show, but it's not going to be the awards that we're going to do on the Insight and Esports Award Show. Soon coming, maybe next week, we'll see. So it'll be different awards money. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to freeball a bit and we're going to come up with interesting and funny awards. So I think we can come up with a lot of good ones here. Because, for example, I'll give you an example, okay? So when I did the By the Numbers yesterday in CSGO, we came up with a bunch, okay? So obviously some of them were purposely set up to trigger fans. So one of them I had was NA Disappointment of the Year. Now, there was no EU Disappointment of the Year. It was just NA. There was all sorts, Most Overrated Player of the Year. It was loads. We even had one, Monty. This is how FG gets on the CSGO show. I don't expect it to get as edgy on this show, by the way. But on the CSGO show, we even had one Worst Fans of the Year. And we made nominees and we voted.
No. Okay. I already...
You're on board?
Get into that.
Okay.
I'm totally on board for that. You know how much I was complaining about certain fan groups this year.
Okay, good. Well, let's do it. Right.
Completely moronic.
So the place to start is actually I actually think the best place to start is in awards that aren't like totally just to trigger people. So ones that are actually have some analysis in them. So an obvious one, this is a real one, is who is the most overrated? Well, here's what we'll do. Problem is, Monty, for this show, we have to do it a bit like the Insight and Esports one. I think the only way to do it reasonably is you have to do an Eastern and a Western one. It can't just be only the world, because then it's going to be like, it's all going to be NA getting bagged on all the shit awards, isn't it? So we have to do like Eastern and Western. So who do you think this year was the most overrated Asian player?
Overrated Asian player? I mean...
Now, I'll give you some context. Because for this one, I've noticed this is something that often can get quite misunderstood. There's two ways you can usually interpret this. Either you end up trying to pick the worst possible player who people think is good, which I usually think's like, that's a bit too much like shooting fish in a barrel. I try to tend to do it of someone who is good, but the rep is that they're extremely good. I tend to go that way with it, All
right. Well, in that case, I have to go with Doan B, who's the mid laner for QG, where there was all this hype surrounding him from a lot of people throughout the season that he was supposed to be just so good. But he came in and just played a bunch of Morgana mid and was responsible for the abomination that was Nautilus mid at times. And I don't think he's a bad player, but you have to remember, he was a Korean rookie. He had never played for a Korean team before, who came into the LPL. And he's a role player on QG. He was never this outstanding mid laner. I thought he was thoroughly mediocre in all regards and massively overhyped by people.
I mean, obviously the strength of QG was if they got to team fights, they were really cool in those. So he was good at that point in the game. The problem was, I mean, just look at the games at the IEM. He got solo killed by Shifter. Shifter went for a solo kill. My whole joke about Shifter is that he's like that mouse. That the problem with a mouse in your house, Monty. This isn't some kind of Dr. Seuss scheme here, right? The problem with having a mouse in your house is that if you spot it out the corner of your eye, once you stand up to turn around, it'll quickly just dart back into that hole. That's Shifter in lane. The second anything happens, he's under that tower. The tower is his safe space, and no one may violate that. Much like Yale University. So The fact that shifters solo killing you, that's a problem right there. You got some issues going on there.
Well, and especially because so many of QG's strategies revolved around kind of protect TNT strategies, whether he was playing a frontline tank in Nautilus, black shielding TNT with Morgana, or sitting there and wild growthing him with Lulu. It was never about his play. He had some good games on Victor and some other champions, but I just see him as insanely overrated. I don't even, like you said, I don't even think he's a bad player. I just think that he was a rookie player this year. He may be good someday. I don't know. But I can tell you that he came in with a ludicrous amount of hype and never, I feel, earned it.
Let me think. Who else could we put in this category? Let me think. Because for this one, I'm sure there's a few nominees we can pick to back up Doinby here. I mean, an obvious one. This might seem like shooting fish in a barrel, Monty, because it's a tired one for this sort of a show, but I'd have to say Pawn. Because again, for me, here's the biggest problem with Pawn. This is why I like to define this category this way for overrated. It's where the reality of the person doesn't match up with the expectation of the person. So the problem is, Pawn has never been this superstar carry mid who's one of the best mids in the world, blah, 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 blah. He's always been like a sick role player who's just really... Here's the thing. Here's the best way to formulate Pawn, okay? If Pawn is the third or fourth best player in your team would be fucking amazing. Probably could win a Worlds or that sort of a competition. If he was your best player, you'll probably be in relative mediocrity. You'll probably be like the sixth best team or something equivalent. Is that too harsh?
I mean, I think he had a good season. I didn't think he was particularly impressive at Worlds, but I thought he played well at MSI. He's definitely I think he's more of a role player, it's true.
But he's presented as, remember, it's between him and Faker who the best of the world is, and then that's the scale people put it on, including people on a specific Western website saying that he was in fact better than Faker outright.
No, that's not true.
Speaking of which, just because I'll probably forget this by the time Summoning Insight comes around, did you see salty little Easyhoon's interview that he did at the beginning of this month called Easyhoon's Confessions?
I thought it was actually a very interesting interview.
Oh, it was very good, but here's the problem. The whole thing is like, remember, here's what's funny. You know the memes around Easyhoon in the West that people like Fionn always put up pictures? They tried to present Easyhoon as though he's like a boss, you know? He's like, he doesn't give a fuck. He is so insecure in that interview, it's unreal. Like, you see the section where he said about one of the matches where he was getting taken out. He'd hoped he was going to stay in for game 3, but they took him out for Faker. And as he was leaving the stage, all the crowd were chanting, Faker, Faker. And he literally said he thought like, what is my place in this team? Or some sort of like Spider-Man level internal dialogue shit.
I know that's what's great about Easyhoon, right? He's very reflective, and he's good at articulating his reflections.
Yeah.
I found it very interesting.
But then there was the part, Monty. I don't know if you remember this. Here's the thing. Things stick with me, my friend. When I see things that trigger me, they stick with me. There was a line where he explains that when he's talking about this problem with Faker being so popular, that, in 2014, he says that Samsung Galaxy with Pawn had a great win, presumably referring to Worlds. And he says, yet that didn't transfer onto Pawn the glory of being the best mid. And then in the next paragraph, he says that even when Faker is, and he actually uses this word, Monty, objectively not the best. I mean, of all times to use the word objectively, it doesn't seem reasonable. That's purely subjective, my friend. But he essentially suggests that Faker was objectively not the best mid laner. And then implies Pawn was. All I'm saying is there's a little bit of salt in it. It's Korean salt, so it's not quite as powerful as the Western salt.
I was having a conversation with Barry, the former OGN translator, who came over, and I don't know if you saw any of the Chinese tournament that went on recently when Royal played Vici.
No.
Okay, so Vici, this was with Dandy back in the jungle. Easyhoon is in the mid lane, and Royal never give up, just fucking destroys them. And Easyhoon dies like 3 times in lane. And Barry reminded me of this image of Easyhoon is just sitting like this in his very Easyhoon expression, like in front of his keyboard after getting totally wrecked. And it's just like the suffering of the taking Chinese money was pretty entertaining at that point in time.
Oh, the sad thing is, Easyhoon does look like he looks like he's a very earnest young man. That's the way I'd describe him, Monty.
Well, I find him very interesting because of he seems well read and he is articulate and he's quiet and does a lot of reflection. And even, it's interesting too, because even his solo queue ID in Europe was John Irenicus, which is the villain from Baldur's Gate 2, which I would have thought he would have been too young to have played, because that's a game that I played. So that means that he has gone back to play very heavy narrative games, which is really interesting for an esports player.
That game came out in the late 90s or early 2000s.
Early 2000s. I think it was like 2001.
It's quite a long time ago. But yeah, he would have been very young at the time. Okay, so anyway, let me think. Pawn. Is there anyone else? Let me think. There must be someone else good. Let's think of who there is. I'm trying to think through. Top laners. See, the problem is I would have said Marion, but obviously he did be the MVP of Worlds, so I can't really do that anymore. So the year has borne him out in that sense, I guess.
I mean, I think Warren had a very good year overall. He had some very impressive plays.
Yeah, but people all year long were saying he was the best. I think he was the best for one tournament.
Yeah, I think that's probably pretty fair.
So, who else is there? Let me see. No, I've got. Let me think. Who do we have in Korea? Let me think. Can you think of anyone in Korea that's overrated?
I don't know if I. That's the thing, because I don't think a lot of these players were overrated in the Korean scene. Maybe.
What about GBM?
I think GBM was great this year.
Monty, you once said earlier in the year, I remember this, you said that GBM was the second best mid laner in the world. Yeah. You said it, my friend. You said it. You still stand by that, do you? You stand by that over 2015?
I think over this year, I think Coco was the second best mid laner in Korea. But beyond that, GBM was probably number 3.
He was good. He was certainly good, Monty. I'm just saying, you drank that Kool-Aid a little bit too quick. Wasn't well prepared.
Okay, I mildly overrated GBM.
How dare you, sir? Okay. The overrating of this player.
So basically,
too damn much.
It's still definitely top 4, right?
Yeah. Okay, fair enough on that one. Well, here's one I've got for you, Monty. And I think you might have said this as well. People who said Ambition is a good jungler. I want to know who those. I want to round those people up. I want to have them on some register somewhere, and when the revolution happens, they will be sent to camps. Like, that is unacceptable. At no point. It's because they phrased it wrong, Monty. Here's the thing about Ambition. It was never that he was a good jungler, like just as you look at what he does as a jungler. What's amazing though is he did somehow fit in the context of what CJ did. Like, he would somehow on some champions be able to make the right engages or to be able to team fight. But he's, as a jungler, what is required of a jungler? Remember, this is where I always go ham on the fucking Chinese about Clear Love. He didn't do any of the things a jungler should do for the first 20 minutes of a game. That's pretty big as a jungler.
Yeah, that is...
is that a fair one? Nominee?
I think it is, but I never was really in the overrating. Maybe, here's an interesting one. Maybe OQ.
Oh, I think so, because the problem with OQ is he's a perfect example of the player where the game he has that he goes crazy, everyone goes, right, that's his normal level. Yep. No. Yep. He has the whole spectrum, and at all times he's going to have that spectrum. He's never going to have the 7 games in a row where he just dominates.
And even though I think he did improve over the year to lose some of his over-aggression, he didn't improve at a very quick rate. He's been very slow to develop. Like, he had those early explosive games and performances, but beyond that, he hasn't really learned very quickly. So that was a bit disappointing. I don't know whether that's the fault of the now defunct Najin coaching staff or what, but yeah. And we still haven't heard any announcements about where he's going either, which is a bit surprising.
Okay, so let's crank it up a level here, Monty. Most overrated Western player of the year.
Oh boy, this is.
Listen, I could probably name about 10 myself, mate. Who would you come up with first? Who's your first nominee here?
Phoenix.
Oh, easy.
Keen.
I mean, let's just start on Phoenix. Remember, people were talking like MVP level.
Yeah. I think Phoenix had a couple of good games on specific champions, but he was massively, massively overrated. And I mean, I think that the most overrated Western team, I mean, it's between Liquid and Gravity for those. I feel because at least in Europe, there was a pretty clear level of dominance. Oh, Unicorns of Love. Ooh, ooh. Yeah, that's another topic though. But I think that Phoenix was mediocre. I don't think he was bad in the context of North America, but I don't think he was a standout player on Team Liquid.
Put it this way, I can't think of another player in any region who was considered a star and a potential MVP of the league who had such a small champion pool as Phoenix. I'm talking ludicrously small. Like, once you get past Azir, you start struggling to even name champs. Like, what?
Yeah.
The odd game of Victor, like, sort of can occasionally play Lulu. Like, you can't be an MVP of the league if we're struggling to get 3 champs for you here. That's pretty terrible.
And he did have that really good play in the CLG game, which I think caused people to massively overrate him.
Called the Expecke effect. That triggered all level money.
I think in terms of overrating, though, Keen really just sticks in my craw because of that Gold Pretend article by Ryan Tag where he dubbed him the anti-carry as if this was...
I love that. That's like almost trolling, isn't it? It's like if he was trying to troll, that's great.
To his credit, he later kind of backed off that article, and I do like a lot of his other pieces, but that particular article where he tried to justify Keen's champion pool as an anti-carry, no, it literally was just Keen's inability to learn new champions that were actually meta and continuing to play them. It wasn't some sort of brilliant shutdown strategy for the mid lane. That's just inefficient League of Legends, right?
The problem with the article, okay, is that the concept was actually a good concept, one that isn't often discussed. Right. The idea of just trying to neutralize someone, which you see in, like you see, for example, in combat sports. You can have someone who's a very good defensive fighter, and his style is not to openly go for the knockout, whatever. It's just to frustrate you, and that's where he's going to get the openings from. Problem is, like you say, Keen definitely wasn't doing that. I mean, just here's a little bit of insight for people. Because LS was Keen's coach at one point in time, I've talked to LS in the past about pick bans and stuff, and he's never, by the way, he's never forwarded any of this information. He never came out and said, oh, Keen's bad or whatever. But as we would be talking through things, he would say things to me like, yeah, well, I mean, he'd be like, here's the list we have for the mid lane champions. And I'd be like, okay, well, I mean, seems fairly obvious. Just put him on this, like the meta champ. Yeah, the problem is he doesn't like the matchup if it goes this way. Oh, okay. So later on, I'd be going, wait a minute, you could actually pick the other side of that matchup. Yeah, he says he can't play that matchup. It's like, what? You can't play either side of a matchup? Like, again, how can this be a star player? You know, this is pretty bad at this point in time.
Yeah, it was pretty noticeable, I would say. And not only that, but the entire theory really became unraveled when they tried to play against TSM in the playoffs, and then he started blind picking Urgot into Bjergsen. It's like, really? That's your plan right now? Blind pick your mid lane Urgot? And when you have a shutdown player, we have to talk about neutralizing picks and counter picks, and Urgot's not a blind pick mid laner.
Yeah, the big problem with Keen, as I've made this analogy before, is that we've got a perfect example of someone who shows how bad Keen is, which is Power of Evil. Because when Power of Evil innovates a pick, it works. He can do it many times. And here's the other key thing people don't know. When Power of Evil innovates a pick, it's usually because he's actually played that pick because it's just a champion he likes in all matchups. So he'll also know like how to play like 7 different champions against it and what the unique power spikes will be. The difference with Keen was you could tell some of these were just cheesy shit he came up with, that if he got the right opponent where they didn't know what was coming there, he could just... Here's what he would usually do. Because he would always counterpick it, they could never know what was coming. So that's why they nearly always used whatever... Which side is it? Blue side is
also,
the one that you can't pick on?
Also, no, you counterpick on red. So that's the crazy thing, though, is that a lot of Gravity's mid-season run, where they started doing really well, was in just a giant swath of red side games in a row where they could get the counterpicks, right? And, I mean, not only that, but the difference with Power of Evil is that when you have these counter picks, or when you have these innovative picks, let's say, the test is, do other teams start using them? In Power of Evil's case, the answer was absolutely yes. I think he really did define a lot of meta picks. No one was playing mid lane Hecarim or Rumble.
So yeah, the problem for me was it was the most pure example of cheese. Not least because if you ever looked at what he would do, I remember quite vividly, I think it was a Gravity against Team Liquid game in the middle of the season, early on in the season actually. And what I remember was when they early on got a kill onto Keen on some weird pick, he instantly just went for some like super abusive build where he came back in like lane with like some item already, like wasn't even doing a normal build. Like he was almost like doing the solo queue cheese where like if the guy gets ahead of you on some support champion, then he's coming back, he's building AP items immediately, you know, like he wasn't even trying to play meta in any way. So yeah, Keen's got to be one because he's just so overrated. Also, to me, he was just like a distraction in the team. He was almost like a wild card. To me, when that team was good, was when Altec was very good, and then when Move obviously came and that really transformed the way they played. It was never that much about Keen aside from him getting them some cheese wins, which didn't work in the playoffs.
Yep.
So I think that's fine. Yeah. In fact, I would. By the way, we can keep listing some, but I think Keen's going to win this one. I suspect.
Yeah, Keen's way up there.
So let's see who else we can put in here. Let me think. I mean, an obvious favourite of mine, Monty. You know, he's always there for me. Reckless, the young man, because he's never been a star player, mate. And he went to Elements. Oh gosh, what's that? Oh, did you get exposed, mate? Oh, I feel so bad for you. I feel like that
this year. Like,
yeah, it was. It was in the first split of this year.
Spring. Yeah, spring.
I feel like that scene, Monty.
He did quite well on Fnatic, and I think he did play well at Worlds. So
he wasn't a star player.
It didn't have to be.
That's the point of the category, Monty. He is represented as a star. Put it this way, there was a thread I saw the other way on Reddit, other day on Reddit. Upvoted comment, I'm talking like 40, 50 points. Someone said, like, who is the best Western AD carry? So people were like, Forgiven, Sneaky. Someone responded, and this was like upvoted, like, wow, the hate on Reckless around here. Just for not saying he's the best. This is the world a Reckless fanboy lives in. If you don't say he's the best, there's some sinister motive there, Monty. You must secretly hate him, or maybe you just hate all of humanity. You want to watch the world burn. Like, no, maybe he's just not a star player AD carry, mate.
Maybe he's not. I think he is. I think he is overrated. I think Huni started out really strong, and then as the year went on, like sort of slowly went down in terms of importance.
Coming into Worlds, Huni probably was overrated.
Yes. I mean, the proof was at the pudding at Worlds. He got smashed by Smeb.
Every really good top laner almost took him to town.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where you really saw the problems that Coral 1 had in EDGs, because Coral 1 couldn't do anything, and Huni really could pick all these picks that wouldn't work otherwise and make them work. So that was when I knew EDG was fucked, when it was like, oh, Riven top works, does it? Well, that's the end of that game then.
Well, I mean, in the other matches, too, that they played, there was a lot of... It was very clear the level that Huni was at. I think Huni is a very good top laner for the West, but when you start throwing in... All the Korean top laners at Worlds were head and shoulders above him.
Yeah, for sure. So, and remember, again, I'll just bring people's attention back again. When Huni was carrying in the spring, I remember people, I'm not talking about the odd idiot who was downvoted. People, this was a genuine opinion in people, was when Huni was carrying in EULCS for the first split, people were like, wow, he is a top 5 player in the world. Well, as Monty just said there, as we found out at the end of the year, he probably wasn't a top 5 top laner in the world.
No.
Remember, like, Duke was sat at home. There's people in China. You know, like, there's a whole bunch of people who were better. So, yeah. And the problem is Huni's just a anomaly. Obviously, Huni and Rekkles aren't going to win that one. Keen, in many ways, outstrips them in its respect. He deserves this award. He earned it. So, there you go. You win that one, Keen. Let me see. Oh, I've got one question, though, because here's the problem. Oh, no, I guess we got Reckless in there. There must be one other name we can pop in here. Okay, I've got one for you that I think this probably should be listed. Probably Quaz, Monty. Because the hype on him ever since he came into the league has been so big. And this year was supposed to be the year where everyone was like, no, he's got the sick team around him. I remember I did an interview that's forthcoming. I won't say who, but it's with a Team Liquid player. And they even said that one of the areas where they thought that some criticism of their coach was unfair was people used to criticize the coach and say, why does he always put Quaz on tanky top laners? Like, why doesn't he set him free and let him carry, etc.? It's because supposedly that really is all that Quaz could really play. Like, actually, when they tried him a few times on carry champs, didn't really work.
Also, Quas had really big... Even though Quas was fine in lane, his team fighting and his engagements were never good. And that was a problem with Liquid in general, was that their team fighting was very poor, and they actually had very low synergy in 5v5 situations, and no one really engaged last year. When we talk about Xpecial, he was missing like a bunch of flash tibbers, and Quas couldn't engage properly. He would get too far ahead of the team and kind of die in the front. So Quas had a nicely sized champion pool, but the sense of timing on engages was quite poor. I don't know if Quas was that overrated.
But when you consider
would people have said he was the best top laner in NA?
He was always brought up in the conversations about best top laner. Whereas, for example, when I gave that example there, that he really only went towards one side of champions, someone like Impact could play all the champions. He could go totally tanky if you want him to be. He could play the carry champion. Someone like that, for me, when I think about the whole year, all 12 months, it just outclassed someone like that.
Impact's also extraordinarily consistent. Impact obviously doesn't have the ceiling, and I wouldn't say that I would be scared of Impact playing Riven in the same way that I'd be scared of Smeb or Someday playing Riven. But Impact he's like a rock up there. He's very, very consistent and very good at what he does.
Okay, so let me think what we do here. Okay, actually, they won't all have to be mean ones, Monty, because some of these are ones that people wouldn't do as a category anyway. So let's do most underrated player. So, okay, who do you think the most underrated Asian player was? Because I think there's going to be quite a few for this one. Because obviously just because the consensus in the West is obviously sometimes very skewed from people who don't watch the league that much or only see the international competitions.
Chaser is one that I would bring up from Jin. When we talk about great junglers, I think that even though if you watch the Korean scene, I think Chaser had a lot of fans, but Chaser's play, he was kind of the only carry on Jin for a really long time, the only real playmaker on that team, because while GBM and Trace were very defensive, they really did rely on Chaser having big early games on Nidalee in order to get anywhere for a while. So I think Chaser was really underrated, and I would say he and Bengi were probably the best junglers in Korea this last year. But everybody knows Bengi's intelligence, but Chaser is a really, really fun jungler to watch.
And obviously, you have to realize as well, for the first half of the year, someone like him could never get full credit because there was still that narrative of like, yeah, but it's just because all the Koreans left to China. So it felt like because you didn't get to knock off the boss before, the Kakao, the dandies of the world, people would just say, oh, you're just the best because you're the next in line, which obviously now, after seeing a whole year, we know is not the case. He objectively was a very good player.
Yeah. And he's on IM now because of it with Coco. So that's a very exciting new jungle mid pairing. I'm really looking forward to seeing that next year.
I've got one I think is a pretty good call. Gorilla.
Oh, yeah.
If you look over the year, for me, he's
Gorilla's
the best support player of
the best
the whole
support
year.
player in the world.
But there were a number of times when I didn't ever hear anyone mentioning him in that scenario.
Like the LoL Esports Top 20.
Exactly, mate.
I actually think we can talk about this more on Summoning Insight like next week, but I think there's a case to be made that Gorilla was the player of the year.
I mean, he's certainly overachieved, put it that way. When you consider the teams he was going against, all the things he did in the spring.
When you look at his consistency and the fact that he came in as the star player on this Coup Tigers team, reeled off a huge number of victories. Sure, they disappointed at IEM, but they made the final of spring. They made the final of Worlds. I don't know. There's a lot to be said, I think, for Gorilla's achievements this year, even though he didn't win. Because if we take a look at some of these other players, I agree with you. I think Marin had a great Worlds, and he had an impressive spring showing, but he lost MSI. And then Faker, he wasn't that great. He was great in summer, and he was good at Worlds, but he wasn't that great in spring. So I think it's going to be tough to choose. I think it's going to be tough to choose like an overall player of 2015, but I think Gorilla is definitely on the short list for that.
Well, and that alone then suggests why he should win this category, because he's on the shortlist, and yet for a lot of the year, people didn't really talk about him. I mean, when the Juggernaut thing was going on, everyone talked about Prey, and then later on it was all about Smeb. But you're right, the only person actually through this, you can draw a line through the whole year with is Gorilla in that team. And he was obviously fantastic player, amazing champion pool, always adapted to all the new meta champions.
And he was basically a second jungler because Hojin was not a great jungler for them, and Gorilla was responsible for saving a lot of their early games, and actually he ganked top a lot. he would walk up top lane. He would recall, walk up top lane, leave prey in the bottom lane, and get kills for Smeb. So,
I'll give you one. So here's one that I would pick, Monty, because it's someone where obviously I came to this conclusion a while ago, and Worlds kind of proved it, is that I think Maple from Flash Wolves. Because remember how the year started? When Flash Wolves won that, I think it was at the beginning of the year was when they won that IEM that was just in their region, or some sort of just Asian one. And everyone was like, oh, that's like, who cares about that? Like, that tournament was a joke. Then when they went to the IEM World Championship and they beat SK, everyone was just focusing on the fact SK lost. Whereas actually, what we've since found out is Flash Wolves were a decent, I mean, they weren't an amazing team. They were a decent team. They're pretty good, though. But of the players in their team, obviously Maple's a very good player.
Yeah.
Yes. In fact, interestingly, I did an interview with another player, another forthcoming one, a European player, who said that during Worlds, someone who didn't go to Worlds, during Worlds, he was playing on solo queue and he was actively looking for like really good Korean type players on the league, on the ladder to try and play them. Okay. And I actually asked him, so who was the most impressive person out of everyone you managed to pair against? And he actually picked Maple, believe it or not.
Well, the weird thing about Maple is I think Maple had a really solid year and he really impressed me at Worlds. And from what I understand, where is he still with Flash Wolves?
Yes, I think he signed again, I think.
I can't believe that because first off, we know he's fluent in Chinese because he's been playing on a Taiwanese team. So it's really surprising to me that the LPL wouldn't throw a bunch of money at him right now. And then the other aspect of that surprises me is I've never talked to him, but I've heard that he's very good at English too. So I'm doubly surprised that neither a Chinese or Western team was able to acquire him because he should really be on the short list for either the LPL or the LCS.
As far as I know, he's quite young as well. Like, I think he's only something like 18 or something. So actually, he's not even far into his career. So yeah, he's got everything going for him. And coming off a competition like that, I think just in the context of the year, he's someone no one talked about. In fact, even in Worlds, people thought I was too much on the LMS hype train by picking him, you know. But I mean, that's the thing. It's like here's the thing you have to realize. It's like I told people. I went back to watch those games to watch how Toys was playing because I was actually trying to do research for that. And then in doing so, I saw all these games where Maple was really good. I was like, wow, this guy's actually legitimately a very good player. So yeah, I think he's a nominee. I think the winner probably has to be Gorilla, though, as we stated. I think that's most reasonable. What about Westerners? Most underrated Western player?
I think by the end, Alltech was getting a lot of praise but he really solo carried Gravity through a lot of that crap that they went through. He was basically the only damage source on that team, and they did get a significant win streak going. But once teams figured out that you just have to focus Alltech, it didn't go so well. So I think Alltech is definitely worthy of some praise. But I think
unfortunately, he spent the first split playing for Winterfox, which hurts. That hurt. Playing with a jungler who actually plays now in LPL, with a jungler as a support player. Don't forget that, Monty. And then became a support player himself. So actually, Monty, in some ways, his own team underrated him because he became the fucking support player to his coach. That's going to be one of the most insane stories you've ever heard.
Yeah, that was... Jeez.
It's nuts, wasn't it? Luckily, though, Monty, that did spawn that epic GIF that I always forget about, but people always send me. You know the one where I was doing the video talking about that, and then I spin around like, it's me, isn't it? It's me. You know the one I spin around like that?
Yeah.
That's where that actually came from. I remember what the dialogue was, but it looks better because it has no volume on, so you just see me doing that. It's good. It's a good one. There's some good GIFs out there. It's good GIFs. So let me see who else. Okay, here we go. Everyone's going to get mad, Monty, but that's what I do. Okay, so get ready to get triggered, everyone. I'm actually going to say that Froggen was one of the most underrated players. Here's why. Because remember the opinion of him around spring of this year, Monty, is that he was shit. He was a terrible player. His style of play was totally outdated. It didn't work. You want to know something interesting, Monty? I've interviewed a lot of players now. A lot of players even who play the polar opposite style of mid lane to Froggen. I've never got a single one who said they thought he was a bad player or that most of them don't even say that he is behind the times and doesn't know any play. They just say he has a different style of play. It's very effective if you play against him. But the way people go so hard on him, it's unreal. Whereas now, around All-Stars, magically again, as it happens every year, Monty, eventually they all come around. And now the consensus is, what are you talking about? We've always said he was a good player. I sure hope he gets a good team now. It's interesting how that works. It's interesting how that works. Get wrecked, fans. Also, listen, I'm just going to put this out there one time and one time only. I have a program, it's not a program, application called RES, Reddit Enhancement Suite. It allows you to put tags on users. I tag all you salty little bitches up who talk shit on the good ones. And the good ones is my group of players that I like, Monty. I tag you all up. And then when I see you 6 months later saying, I think that guy's a good player, what are you talking about? I see you, motherfuckers. I see you. I have like a prophet's vision, sentience. I know what you said 6 months ago because I've got you. I tagged you.
I like how you indulge in the satisfaction.
I know, it's ridiculous, isn't it?
Why even go to the effort of tagging these lame ass motherfuckers?
Because it is. It's enjoy. Because here's how I first started doing it, Monty. I first started doing it.
You just love revenge porn.
I know.
I do. The revenge porn subreddit too. That's why you like me, because I'm named MonteCristo, right?
Exactly. We're gonna get revenge on Reginald one day, Monty. As long as you don't keep hugging him and fucking give him a hot stone massage or whatever.
How do you know that's not part of the plan?
Oh, okay. I see. The long con is it.
MonteCristo plays the long game. It was like a 20-year game with the Count of MonteCristo, wasn't it?
Okay, right. Well, we'll see. So, because here's the thing. Here's how I actually started doing that, Monty. When I went, obviously it's not as bad now, but back in the past when there were scandals and I went through hate cycles with Reddit, what I would actually use RES for, this is when I first started tagging people, is anyone who made like any really extreme comment, like, this person should never work in esports again. Or even better, Monty, my favorites were people who said stuff like, I will never watch any of his content or Summoning Insight again. I tagged all those people. And you know what, Monty? No joke. A year later, I see them all in the threads. Not all of them, but I see some of them in the thread. Like, I literally see people that are in the threads saying nice comments about Summon Insight, Monty, and their tag says, will never support my content again. That is satisfaction to me. I like that. But I get a kick out of that.
You get a thrill because you know that you were right all along and that their hatred was unjustified. And now they have come around like the prodigal son to your loving embrace.
Oh, here's the thing, Monty. I never reply to them like, oh, wrecked, you said this shit. I like that. Here's the thing. In the end, I will win. I am the virus that will take over everyone. And eventually they will all have to think my way. So that's my success. I've succeeded. My zombie virus will take over the world, and they will all give in. So that's my approach. Like I don't want. Let it be known here, Monty. I don't want to destroy Riot. I just want all of Riot to bow to me, tell me I was right, and that they've realized the error of their ways, and ask for advice, counsel, and I will bountifully and very graciously give it.
Slots at the analyst desk.
That would be a nice gesture, I think. Doesn't have to be, but just be a nice gesture, Bend the knee a little bit, So, but anyway, we're back on track. I think we derailed that one like a motherfucker there. So anyway, was there anyone else who you must have another pick for underrated Westerner of the year? Let's think of all the teams that were out there. Let's think. I mean, there must be a few in EU. Let me think. Because in EU there was. Is there anyone from H2K you want to put on there?
No, the thing about the Western teams is I feel that it's hard to pick an underrated player because I feel like the Western fan base is so fickle that everybody got hyped up week to week, right?
Here's the problem. You're right there. Here's the biggest problem I've always had actually with the West is that it still sounds weird, but they actually give too much love. Like everyone who is good is just raved about. And so as a result, the problem in the West is when you start trying to name like top 5 at this, and then they're listing like 15 names, like it's true. They do go a bit ham with that. Let me think.
So it's actually hard to find underrated players because of that reason.
Who else was there in NALCS though? Yeah, you're right, actually, because when I'm trying to think of names, like an obvious one to me would be Freeze, because he was on one of the shittest teams in the whole league. But then people did hype.
Everybody knew that he was good.
That's true. People did admit that he 1v9, so I guess that's fair in that sense. I I mean, in a weird way, I guess it doesn't work for the whole year, but in a weird way, I guess maybe Featherman was a bit underrated early on because it was just seen as the Hooney show early on, and then Yellow Star, and then the team was winning with their coach.
But Featherman also grew a lot as a player over the course of the year. He was a much different player, even between MSI and Worlds, a much better player.
Oh my God, Monty. I've just realized we missed him. You know that overrated section?
Kickus?
9.5 out of 10 mechanics. How did we miss Santorin? He needs a nomination, mate.
That's actually a great one.
That's good. How has that not become a fucking meme? Monty, everything becomes a meme. How is me getting loco to say that Santorin is 9.5 out of 10 faker mechanics? How is that not a mad meme that's going everywhere? That should be everywhere, right? That's brilliant.
Well, Loco's scale is only from 9 to 10, so he was basically half
didn't tell us. Yeah, he didn't tell us that, unfortunately. Man alive. I bet Loco's one of those people where every movie's an 8 out of 10.
Also, mechanics really mean nothing if you never show that you have them.
I've realized what it is, Monty.
His mechanics against the AI were insane.
What I've realized is
the way he used his Nidalee Q and E combo to take out wolves, my God, beautiful.
When Loco finishes his career in esports, I think he's primed for a job writing game reviews at IGN. Everything's just like 9.8 out of 10, 9.2 out of 10. I didn't really like this game so much. 8.7 out of 10. Like, okay, he's primed for that job, you know, Monty, where they like actually force you by the developer paying you money to give like a review that's way too high, as has been revealed many times. I think he's ready for it. I think that's his future job. I've seen it already, Loco. So I'll hook you up.
IGN esports host.
Oh, by the way, Monty, that's just led me into my own little joke that I'll once again remind everyone that as someone who is a writer for Riot, who has this is, again, Monty, we were talking about this off air. In life, sometimes the surreal synchronicities are too ridiculous that you almost feel like that's actually bad writing. If it was a script, you'd be like, that's very tacky, you know, it's very obvious. So, okay, how about this, Monty? Someone who works for Riot picked the alias Spin, and when they worked for IGN, gave League of Legends a 9.2 out of 10 rating. How do you like that? It's good, right? It's good.
I thought the reviews for League of Legends were pretty bad at first.
Maybe they were, but she wrote it just before she joined Riot. It's interesting how these things work, isn't it, Monty? Coincidence, just another coincidence. You know what I say, Monty? A famous quote. A coincidence is what you have left over when you apply a bad theory. Just saying, fans. Just saying. So I think I've left enough clues there for everyone to put together. So
that explains a lot of coincidences in the new Star Wars movie, actually.
Explains a lot of coincidences, mate. I mean, that's how bad that Star Wars movie. They may as well have just started turning to the camera. Well, I guess I'll have to do this one solo. They should have just started just doing shit like that. Like, that's how bad the fucking movie was. Like, why not? I mean, we're not going to give any spoilers, obviously, but yeah, it was bad. It's bad, motherfuckers. So you're not 8. I don't have a time machine, therefore, no, I didn't enjoy that movie, thanks. Anyway, let's continue on. So we were just in the overrated ones. Okay, let's do it for team then. So most underrated Asian team. I think this is going to be a hard one.
Yeah, because by the time Worlds came around, all the Chinese teams ended up being overrated. So it's hard to say an underrated Chinese team.
Or Asian team, yeah. Let me think.
Well, I think Flash Wolves were very underrated coming into Worlds, at least.
That one's not bad. I mean, here's the weird thing, Monty. This will sound weird, but in a way, Coup does qualify for this, because even though in the beginning of the spring, they were the Monsters, who were the best team in the world, for summer through to Worlds, they were constantly downplayed. I mean, if you remember, when we predicted on Some of the Insight, I think you predicted almost every round of the playoffs that they would lose. I think you predicted they'd lose to Najin, then they'd lose to, was it Jin Air next? Then it was like CJ. Like every team, Money. But admittedly, they did show us that they were fantastic by doing so. Then at Worlds, they were supposed to be the third best Korean team. They beat KT. They became the second best. So I think overall they qualify, even though they had a period.
They're a very streaky team. That's the thing, is that they would go through long fallow periods and then have really long, impressive win streaks. So if we look at when the Cinderhulk patch was released, they were not great as a team. And they did have a bit of an up and down. But that said, yes, I do think coming into Worlds, they were underrated. But I think Flash Wolves, if we talk about the performance at IEM, we talk about the performance at Worlds, was quite interesting, actually.
People often forget that Flash Wolves was the team closest to beating TSM at that tournament. They won the first game, as far as I remember.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, let me think who else. Underrated team.
Oh yeah, no, I don't think they did. I don't think they did win the first game, but they should have won the first game.
No, that was the other way around. It was WE who.
It was WE that should have won the first game. Yeah,
you're right. Did win the first one. Yeah, no, you're right on that one. Because if you remember, Shie or whatever was like super far ahead on Ari.
Yeah, yeah. And then they made that dumb tower dive in the mid lane inhibitor.
So okay. Is there any other? The problem is, like you're saying, the Chinese ones kind of shot themselves in the foot by being so bad at Worlds.
That was really disappointing. It would have been a much more exciting tournament if EDG and LGD had showed up.
Okay. This might be contentious, Monty, but in a weird way, I would say actually Chao Gu could apply for this. Because remember, for the whole split, again, their split didn't count. Everyone was like, well, you're just the new snake. You're not going to be that good. But actually, they turned out to be
they split 1-1 like every match.
But they did turn out to legitimately be better than the snake of the season before, how they were presented.
That's true.
Even at this last IEM.
I just really don't like that team.
Every round this last IEM,
my vision is clouded by hate, Thorin.
The IEM, every round, people just shit on them constantly. They were one game from winning the tournament. Yeah, they look bad in the games they lose. That's their style. They have to get to the team fight and do well in it. If they do, they're a good team, though. So the problem with them is their weaknesses are too apparent to me. Like, if you can hide your weaknesses, then people will overrate you. You can see both aspects out front. So that's not a bad one. Okay, so anyway, the winner for that, I think I'm fine with it being Flash Wolves for that, just for the whole year overall. Because again, most people would have never even had them top 10 at any point in the year. So I think that's reasonable. Right, most underrated Western team.
Oh, God.
Because the problem is we obviously had a lot of overperforming Western teams. Like Unicorns of Love, obviously they were overperformed. C9 obviously had their problems between the splits where they were good in the first one, then went to shit in the next one. Gravity, obviously they can't be counted because they were massively overhyped.
I guess maybe H2K?
H2K? That's not bad considering here's the thing about H2K was there was an obvious line and the only people who were above it was either Fnatic or
Origin.
And everyone below it actually H2K probably would or should beat. But the thing is, because H2K had their own problems, people would often just shit on them. I mean, Lulex obviously being one, but people would obviously, I think people downplayed them a bit too much when you consider they were a pretty consistently good team.
Yeah.
Even Worlds, they didn't do terribly, and they were in the group of death if you were one of the lesser teams. I
mean, they did almost lose to the Bangkok Titans.
Listen, mate, it's happened. Lulex. You know, here's one of the few times I do feel bad, Monty. Not for anything I've done. Remember, I have no contrition for anything I've ever done in my life. But one of the few times I do feel bad about things that might have happened as a result of me is that the other day Lulex did a tweet saying that he wants like a new team. So just to help him out, I retweeted it. So then I just saw people just going in on him like, why, you shit, you want to fuck up another team? Like, Jesus Christ, he's not even in a team right now. What, do you want blood or something? You want a pound of flesh? Like, he's trying to find not only that, he said he'd be willing to go to a challenger team. I'm sure he can fucking play in a challenger team. That's one thing that triggers me, right? When people don't understand. When I say Reckless isn't a star AD carry, that doesn't mean I think he should be like playing in fucking the Turkish league. That means I think it's a totally fine AD carry to be like the fourth best AD carry.
Even the Turks don't want to play in the Turkish leagues anymore. Holy Phoenix is going to Europe, baby.
I mean, Lulex, obviously, if he was in a lower level LCS team, would be fine. It's just he can't a team like H2K where he's the obvious problem and the obvious weak spot. That's the issue there. So yeah, H2K is not bad. Is there any North American ones we can pick? Here's one.
Also, there's plenty of instances of players being very poor and then over time getting better. Like, why shouldn't, if this guy still wants to play as hard as he can and he can get a spot on the team? You're wrong about that, dude. I'm sorry. I watched Smeb's career.
He was never as bad comparatively as Lulex was, mate.
You're wrong. He got a fucking Long Panda award for being the worst top laner in Champions. Out of 16 top laners, he was bad.
Yeah, and then it'll be like solo flame or some shit.
Okay, no. Impact. And do you know what the trash talk at that finals was? the other top laner was like, "You got solo killed by Smeb, you piece of shit." Like that was like the trash talk, was them laughing about him dying 1v1 to Smeb.
He's Korean.
You're rewriting the history of Smeb.
Korean.
I lived the history.
He's Korean,
of Smeb.
mate.
Do you know how many games of Smeb I had to watch where I was just like, this guy is so bad?
Do you know how rarely Westerners improve like Koreans do? Just saying, mate. He's not. He was
Chaser was another one when he was known as Real
Korean.
Fox. He was,
Lex is not Korean. He's French as fuck. He's French as fuck, money. That's what you need to know. I think he's French. I don't even know, actually. I think he's French. Anyway, if he's not, that would be incredibly offensive.
I'm just making a point. He is French, yes.
Yeah. So, let me think. Who is that? Okay, I've got one for you. And this is... Problem is, when I add all the caveats, people are going to think this is making excuses. But I actually think people will never realize how good Team Impulse was, Tip, over the year because of two reasons. One, when they got to play TSM in the spring split, they literally, I will never know why, for no reason, Rush just played fucking Nunu every game. I'll never understand why. It doesn't make sense. So spring split's done.
That was the worst thing ever.
Then in summer split, they were doing well, but because of the Zhao ban, they had to bring in an absolute rookie mid lane. So you see what I mean? Actually, in terms of the circumstances, I can see why people wouldn't think they were that good.
Those Nunu games where Rush was like flash snowballing people were so fucking painful to watch.
So yeah, for my money, they were like a top 3 team in NA, LCS, both.
Especially because I predicted that Tip would win that series versus TSM.
It's me, you, and Dentist. And
the reason was that I thought Rush's aggressive style of jungling would be too much in the early game, would be too much for TSM to handle, and then he just goes and picks Nunu. I was like, why?
He was essentially, people don't know this, he was essentially the innovator of Disco Nunu. He was trolling his own professional team, before that was even started. Anyway, so that's that one. That's most underrated team. So we've done underrated, overrated. Okay,
we've got worst fan base.
Let's just do that right now. Okay, worst fan base, Monty. Who would you pick? I know who you're going to pick already. Oh, there we go. The black and orange.
100%. And what was so strange about this year, and I went on rants and somebody inside about how shit the Fnatic fan base was, but it got to a fever pitch in a way that I have never seen. A fan base in League of Legends, but this was before Worlds. Do you remember? You remember before Worlds where I was going on my rant,
Hero and all that shit?
Yeah, and I was saying this is a very good team, and I was talking about some of their flaws. And I remember when I said that I think that this team is probably maxed out by going to a semifinal. I said a semifinal placement would be very good for them, and I think that's probably about where they're going to land. The Fnatic fan base, I literally couldn't say anything besides Fnatic is the greatest team ever without people just shitting all over me on Twitter. I wasn't even saying they were bad. I repeatedly said they were a very good team, like a top 8 in the world team. But if I had any criticism about their play whatsoever, I was wrong. And the fucking delusion got to just such a ludicrous degree.
Well, I remember.
It's been one thing in the past where TSM has had some pretty stupid fans, but the level of just rage.
Put it this way: no real TSM fans from season 3 onwards actually thought they were going to win Worlds. I very rarely ever saw that.
Yeah, but you actually saw
really
that
thought it was possible.
Yes, many, and those comments were being upvoted to the sky on Reddit, and it was just this insane circle jerk. And
I just remember there was this crazy logic that was used, right, where when Fnatic was playing Coup, I think before you saw the series, a reasonable way to break it down was both teams have the chances to win, both have similar, different strengths. Fnatic could win, but they're not a favorite to. I had it closer to a 50-50, okay. Here's the problem.
So did I. I didn't expect it for you.
There were Fnatic fans who were like, of course they will win Febiven versus fucking, what even is his name? Kuro. Like, this isn't even a competition.
Actually had a very good Worlds tournament, actually.
So here's the problem. They used the most faulty logic you've used. They said, well, they beat EDG, so of course they can beat Coup. It's like, yeah, but EDG had struggled for like a month and a half. Coup had never been about. In fact, Coup had, if anything, had powered up towards Worlds.
Yep.
So they did that thing where you just take one type, like, well, since people said that EDG would be good and they thrashed them 3-0, obviously they'll wreck Coup Tag. Like, no, that's ridiculous. And the level of assault when they got 3-0'd.
I know.
That was the purest salt we have ever experienced in the LCS era.
It was absolutely wonderful. Thorin.
That shit was like cocaine. I did that. I snorted that salt up off a framed photograph that I have of TSM Season 2 lineup that won all those lands that people thought would do well at Worlds. It got wrecked by Frost.
I mean, it could have been better. They could have gotten 3-0'd by EDG, and then EDG could have gotten 3-0'd by KOO for the maximum disrespect. But after the game 5 against SK Telecom at MSI, and then the 18-0 run, I've just never seen such an insane, and the acquisition of Reckless, right?
No, but that's the thing. You're right.
Good upgrade for them.
That match against SK was referenced way too many times. It was referenced as though, well, it was even referenced, Monty, with the logic of, if that's what they could do before, imagine now, like, really, and no one else improves. SK Telecom don't improve, do they not? That couldn't have been the best possible performance against SK. Really? So I guess this time, what? They win 3-2, do they, this time? Okay, guys, whatever you say, whatever faulty logic we got to do, these mental gymnastics. It's funny that there are a lot of morons in fan bases, but in a way, here's my theory. I'm not condescending, Monty. I'm going to give morons credit. Most fans aren't morons. It's that they use their brain capacity to do mental gymnastics of the most contorted and tenuous kind within their brain. That's where all the brain capacity is going, so that they don't just think about the game and go, actually, if I was being objective, these teams don't match up in these ways. That's what all their brain power is going to.
Yep. But yes, that was the. I hope that we never see a Western fan base as incredibly obnoxious, loud, and stupid as the Fnatic fan base heading into Worlds this year. Because when you start attacking people who are saying that your team is very good, but here are some flaws, I think you have some major problems. I think there has to be a line drawn somewhere where I can understand fans doing it if I say your team is a bottom 4 team in NA and they're not very good. But I was literally saying, I think Fnatic could get to the semifinals of Worlds. I think that's a realistic outcome for them. And for a Western team, that's an excellent outcome. Absolutely
I agree.
Excellent.
I also hope we never see any fan base hopped up on hope and actually thinking that they could be the best. I pray also, Monty, for a scenario where we never have to see that again. I hope we've all learned our lesson. Just say no to hope, kids. Just say no to hope.
that's people think hope is good, but that's the whole story of Pandora's box in Greek mythology, right?
Yeah.
Let's all the evils of the world out and hope to keep people alive.
Hope is a gateway drug.
It is to
a gateway emotion, isn't it?
A gateway emotion.
Yeah. See, that's why I'm the way I'm
keeping you having faith in a very dark lifetime.
Yeah. I've never fallen into the trap of hoping, Monty. That's why I stay so pure. I don't fall into these emotional droughts and deluges that other people are tormented by. I don't hope.
Exactly. Well, if you have appreciation for the finest things in life, like great League of Legends play, you don't have to fall into the hope category because you know it's going to be delivered no matter what. You don't have an emotional attachment to which teams win or lose.
Let me think. Who else should we do here? Okay, I've got one for you. Worst roster move of the year. Let's think. Let's start thinking, boys. Let me think. Worst roster move.
It's hard to tell because are we including because there probably weren't a lot of roster. There are never a lot of roster moves in the middle of the year, so we'd have to talk about like after season 4 into season 5.
Yeah, okay, we can extend it
into the spring season.
Yeah, okay, we can do that. Oh, I've got an obvious one off the top of my head. You ready? I think this is a good nominee at very worst. Reckless 2 Elements. Didn't work out for Elements, didn't work out for Reckless, didn't work out... Well, I mean, it did work out for Fnatic, but they would have obviously been even better themselves with Reckless than Steelbacks. Actually, it worked out for no one.
How about Forgiven to Gambit?
Well, let's put it on the other side. How about this? SK Gaming releases Forgiven. There we go.
Yeah, that's the one.
Relegated.
Right? That's a terrible... Yes, relegated.
And the person they picked up instead, I'd rather have... Svenskeren literally said, I'd rather have Candy Panda. Well, there you go, mate. Did you enjoy that? Did you enjoy what happened to you there? Good.
Oh, Fox is a really good candidate for overrated player too.
Yeah, certainly when you consider his spring level, sure. And then he got his chance to carry, and he did them right out into. He carried them right into Challenger, guys. He qualified for Challenger his first attempt. He was in many ways the MVP of their Challenger run. So okay,
but SK's fall was just nuts. First place in Europe, going into IEM Katowice, them getting deconstructed by the Tigers, wrecked from that point forward, and then releasing their star player.
Releasing the MVP of the whole fucking league. I think that's got to be a good candidate right there. Release the MVP of the whole league. And then figure, this will probably be better this season. Great. That's unreal, isn't it? That's amazing. SK deserves a fucking award for that, mate. They deserve it. Let me think of another good one, because it has to be
that has to be the worst one, dude.
That's got to be one of the worst. But there has to be some nominees as well, who at least can fit in there. Let's see. See, I don't know if this is unfair, but in a way, here's the problem. In a way, I feel like Incarnation to Cloud9 should qualify because he didn't turn it around until High came back anyway. So the idea of taking High out of the lineup to put Incarnation in, from what we saw of what happened, it feels like that was a mistake. Like if they'd have kept that lineup with Meteos and Incarnation, I'm not joking, I think they get relegated. They were looking real bad.
I don't know if I would go that far.
They were looking bad, mate.
I mean, I can't tell you that the Renegades was doing bad things to them in scrims at that time before they brought High back. We were playing them a lot, and we were.
And that's the bad Renegades, people. That's not the current Renegades. That was the old Renegades. Just saying.
Well, hey, we might still be the bad Renegades. Who knows, really?
Again, don't give in to hope. As long as you remain stoic, whatever happens will happen, and we will allow that fire to burn through us and cleanse us. So that's all that matters.
I will say we are a better Renegades now, but there are a lot of better teams in the NALCS this season. So
it's like I've always said, Monty, you should only try and compete against yourself and your own potential. Well, not the best attitude for an owner of a sports. I don't know if the fans will accept that, but that's my philosophy in my own life. So anyway. Let me think. Bad roster move.
How about Dandy to top lane?
I mean, that's like a role swap. I mean, roster moves and like sign or release someone. Let me think. There's been some bad ones. Okay, I've got one that doesn't make any sense for you. Here's a good one. Vasily to Vici Gaming. So you've just signed the best support player of all time. In his prime, MVP of the previous worlds, you say, right, well, we all know the bot lane is very important. So what we're going to do is pair this player with a guy who isn't even the best AD carry in NALCS. And really? You know the sickest thing? I made a tweet today, Marty. Do you realize this is a real world we live in? The bot lane of fucking LMQ has now each separately played with gods. Uzi is now going to play with Moore, and Vasily got to play with Mata. Did these guys find...
I don't think Moore's that bad. Come on.
Compared to what Uzi should have.
Okay, yeah. That's true.
These guys found a fucking cursed monkey paw, I'm telling you. They found one, Monty. I don't know what they did. But unfortunately, they had to, like all things, give a sacrifice in order for the magic to work. So sadly, when he was out the room, they sacrificed Zhao Weizhao. But I think for them, it was worth it. They got further in their career. The slingshot effect.
He's not banned for that much longer.
That's true. Actually.
By the way, the dream is still alive. Speaking of bans, that Apto actually joins a Korean team this year because he's unbanned now.
The problem is when you saw those stats on the salaries they make, I feel like he might just be like, listen, I'm all about the Benjamins. I don't give a fuck about.
Sure, but he could play in China or somewhere. I don't think he is. I don't think he cares. I think you're absolutely right. But come on, man. There's such a good anime plot line to Apto joining a Korean team and going up against Faker as the dark Faker who's been banned. Uh-huh. It's incredible. Like the storyline is absolutely amazing.
Here would be the dream, Monty, is if CJ were the ones who signed him. So obviously you've got this franchise that now means nothing. It's in the dirt. It's dead. That would be the way to revitalize the franchise, right, Monty? You make a mega risky signing like that. You bring in the bad boy, and now you used to be like that would be like a WCW style NWO heel turn, Monty. Now you go the most popular team who are the most well loved, the legacy players. Now you just the assholes. Now you're like we got Apto, just getting all the assholes. Bring back Ring Troll, just having Mrs. Curfew all the time. I'm going deep. I'm trying to think of assholes that creates the problem. Obviously, we'd keep Ambition. Great A asshole. Sadly, he left to Samsung Galaxy, but he probably deserves to play him anyways. Okay. What category even was that? Was that really all a digression from a discussion about fan base of the year?
No, we were doing the worst roster.
Roster move, that's right. Let me think. There has to be another good one. Let me think. Is there not any that in NA that were bad ones? Well, I mean, if you want to just be an asshole, Santorin to TSM. That can't count though because they did win IEM and an NALCS. Yeah. So I guess you can't really count that. That's if you have a lot of success, you can't shit on the guy.
I just want team toxicity, Thorin. I want Mythy and Apto and Forgiven. I want Apto to go to Europe. That's what I want. To join with all of the other top Cabashard. Yeah. Get them all together on one team.
Obviously, Diamond Prox is the jungler.
Yep. That'd be amazing.
That'd be the team. Let me think. Is there any NLCS ones that weren't that good? Who even was there in NALCS? See, here's the thing. People are going to want us to say Uzi to OMG was a bad roster move because it didn't work.
But it really wasn't on paper.
Problem is, at the time, that was a fantastic roster move. And how can you blame either people then? It was both good for both of them. Because remember, Star and Rock have never accomplished anything in the actual LPL. And OMG wanted to try and get a new star to fix some of the 8 stars.
They looked really good coming out of Worlds the previous year with the way that obviously Going fell off massively, but we couldn't have known that at the time. So it's not like Uzi was responsible for that failure necessarily.
Yeah. Okay, right. Screw that. Let's just go then. Let's do the best roster move. What would you pick? Best roster move of the year.
Well, unintentionally, Huni and Reina to Fnatic worked really well. But they couldn't have known that. But it did end up paying massive dividends for them.
Yeah, that's the thing. On one context, I think it wins in terms of the outcome. I mean, the Huni one's fine. It's okay to take a risk on Huni. It's to get Rain over as well. That's the part. That was I'm sorry, that's not even new. That's just madness.
But if you know that that Rainover speaks English and can help Huni's transition, it does make sense, right? If you have that information.
Let me think. I mean, for next year, there's a few, obviously, because we're going to count the off-season as being for next year, like we did, because we're going to count Season 4's off-season for this. For next year, obviously, all the TSM ones have a chance to be fantastic ones, Sarah, but because we haven't seen them play.
I got a terrible roster before you. Sorry. Dade to M3.
That's a very good one.
Dade was our player of the year in 2014, Thorin. And he went to fucking M3.
And that not only wasn't a good team, it didn't have very many good players on it either.
No, it was terrible.
But what I like about M3 though is that Dada didn't go alone. He got to take another genius teammate with him, Lupa. And so for me, in many ways, M3 was sort of Lupa's reckoning. It was his own private hell where he got to experience what he is. It was a mirror to be held up against Lupa to show him what he is. Because you have to realize he thought he was the riches and the fame and dandy and matter. He thought that was all part of himself. And he had to realize, stripped away from that, he had to be shown what he was. Basically, M3 was a psychedelic experience for Lupa.
It was the esports ayahuasca. You got to go, and sometimes you have to go out, away from what you know, go to a distant land in order to have these kind of reflective experiences, right? You have to be isolated in a different culture.
Okay.
And then, drink deeply from the ayahuasca
That
bowl.
one though, Monty, because the problem is ayahuasca can be quite pleasant for some people. Like some people have like euphoric visions of a magical thing. What I'm going to go with instead is a tribal ritual poison, because they have poisons that they take where the whole point is, like, for example, the ones where they make you put your hand in a glove of bullet ants. You know, that where it's one of the most painful things in the world. And you have to be bitten by it to become a man. And the whole point of this, right, is the pain is so bad. You feel like you're going to die. You wish you were going to die. Then eventually, after a period of time, you don't die. And in doing so, you realize what's incredible about life and what you would have given up by dying. And you expect the responsibility that the world is full of pain, and you become a man. That's what Lupa went through by going to M3. A rich poison. I feel like we keep digressing a lot here.
We know we're the worst because we know way too much about this shit.
Okay. Let me think. Is there any other really good roster moves? There must be at least one other. The problem is roster move is one of the hardest ones, because in one sense, there's two ways to do it. Either you do it by what was a great move at the time. So for that, Uziato would win. But or you do it by...
Pole Belter to CLG worked out very well for them.
That was good. Not least because inadvertently it meant they didn't use Hui, which certainly worked out.
Link.
Because here's the thing. On paper, a fantastic roster move was Najin managing to get Duke for fucking Nagne. But...
And Limit.
But even though they were good, obviously they never did anything in terms of results. I don't think that's a bad roster move. I think it was a pretty good one. I think, put it this way, Najin got the better end of that deal.
Pickaboo to KT was really good.
Yeah, that's a good one. Let's pick that one. That's one we can put in there, definitely. Pickaboo to KT, because obviously before that...
Before that, they played one round robin. They were 5-4, and then they ended up making the finals. So they were barely above 50%, and then they ended up making the finals of that season. And the improvement was immediate and noticeable.
Okay, here's one for you, Monty. Worst legacy player of the year. Oh boy, this is going to be a good one, Monty. Ready? There's a lot of names we can go in here, mate. Shall I start things off? His name on YouTube is Sir Dies a Lot. It's Dyrus. Just saying. Listen, here's the thing about Dyrus that people don't understand. I don't and have never shit on Dyrus, but that's for most of his career. You have to realize, again, the guy played since season 1, and season 1 was in 2011. So here's the thing. The abuse that he gets now, which to some degree is justified in terms of he's a terrible player in an international context, usually was overrated in past seasons. But the problem is when you play long enough, eventually, unless you're some god, you eventually are going to drop off. And this season for me, he really did drop off. This year was the one where he stayed too long.
He did win IEM though.
Sure.
To his credit. And so there was that.
Team like.
Yep, that's true.
And Lost Boy.
Lost Boy actually did play very well at IEM. Another one would be Ambition, who we've already brought up. He's in a similar situation. He's in basically a similar situation to Dyrus, where he used to be one of the top players in his region in his role. Difference is that Dyrus is never a top international player in his role, whereas Ambition was. Ambition was crapping on kids as like the all-star mid laner before Faker even joined the league. He went to All-Stars in 2013 and was voted there by the fans and did very good mid laner.
Yeah,
but he definitely was not good this last year.
In the most ridiculous sense of a legacy player, Ambition has always been one of those ones who should have been considered being removed in the past. Like, it's kind of crazy to think back that during the periods of time when it was obvious they were loading up Blaze rather than Frost to be the successful one, the idea that they kept Ambition and didn't just swap him for Coco or try to get a different mid is crazy. But this year was the worst because they made him a fucking jungler.
The fact that last year in 2014, when they had the chance in the summer season to make a CJ super roster and basically just load all their talent onto one team to try and make a run at Worlds,
they didn't do it.
Didn't do it. I was like, what are you even doing right now?
And do you remember the beauty of that?
Because they had Swift. I mean,
and Coco.
They had Swift and Coco on Frost.
Flame, Emperor, Lost Boy.
Emperor, Lost Boy on Blaze.
It's pretty sick, right?
Bad Life on Frost. Just play Emperor, Bad Life, Coco, Swift, and Flame on a roster. Just do that, please.
Here's the sick thing. Do you remember the outcome of that season? It was the only season where both of their teams never made the playoffs.
Yep.
So they literally got the worst possible outcome. Good job, guys. Those CJ managers, but at least they've gone to China though, Monty. Don't worry about that.
It's all right. They've got reach now.
Okay. Let me think. What else could we do? Worst fans. Okay, I've got one for you. Biggest disappointment of 2015. It can be any context, Monty. It doesn't even have to be in the game. Could be a personality, could be a move, could be a person, could be something that
What
would you pick?
It has to be LGD and EDG at Worlds. Okay. I really wanted them to do well because I think it would have made the tournament a lot more exciting. And for LGD to fall out in group stages was so sad to see. And EDG
I think we have to make it.
Not even putting up a fight in quarterfinals. EDG almost lost to the Bangkok Titans. What the fuck is that?
I think we have to make it LGD because the difference is EDG at least had done badly in the playoffs in LPL, whereas LGD had won the playoffs. So the idea that they then got dumpstered and won only 2 games with a glorious Flame in the game, which in many ways they don't even deserve to. He carried them in those. So let me think.
That's pretty bad, man.
See,
LGD was pretty fucking disappointing.
Remember,
and not only that, but remember LGD then went to San Jose and lost to new TSM.
Unforgivable. Nice. Okay,
well, I just think they had after having such a high, I got a serious case of blue balls from watching that shit, man. After watching LGD win the summer season.
Remember, some of these are jokes, guys. So with that in mind, my worst disappointment of 2015 was when I saw Quickshot come on camera and say that Bjergsen was overall a better player than Faker. Just saying, guys. But here's the thing. I've already built a little trapdoor into that, Monty. It wasn't really the biggest disappointment, guys. I'm just kidding. Because as I mentioned before, I never partake in the drug of hope. So I never actually expected anything more of Quickshot. So it was fine. See what I did there?
God.
Keep this straight face on, Monty. Don't give anything away here. Poker face. Okay. Let me think. Actually, wait a minute. Hasn't that got to be up there in one of the worst roster moves? CLG cuts double lift.
We don't know the effect of that yet, so we can't say, can we?
Yeah, but the problem is it wasn't that he was already going to... They literally cut him. I guess you can't know yet, but that's got to be...
Look, after they cut him, they made the finals of IEM San Jose.
Nothing to do with that bracket at all.
Or the weirdness of the season. Look, I don't put a lot of weight in that, but it's way too early to make a call on that one.
Okay, let's see who else. What else? Disappointment of the year. We've got to be Legal LoL Esports top 20 players to watch at Worlds list.
No, Thorin. No. If it had been players to watch at Worlds, that list could have been okay. You're actually making it sound better.
Top 20 players at Worlds. Then.
You're actually apologizing for that list.
I'm a LoL Esports apologist.
You are revising right now what it should have been. You have actually neatly edited that title into what it should have been named as opposed to what it was actually named.
I'm a LoL Esports apologist. That's my new role. Now that I know Alphadraft might get shut down, I've got to get I'm setting up a slush fund that Riot will contribute towards, and I will rewrite history so that they will write. You know?
God bless you.
So, has Monty died here? Has he frozen?
I'm not dead.
Am I alone here? Am I frozen?
You're frozen.
Oh, everyone was frozen. Are we all back now?
I'm back. You're the one who's having problems.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Okay, right. Well, we're back anyway. Right, we've got a couple more before we end. So let me think of a good one here. Okay, I've got one for you. Biggest throw of the year. Can you think of a crazy throw that someone did? What about Origin versus Fnatic in the regular season of summer? Remember that one?
That was a pretty insane throw where Origin had that massive lead and then Xpeke couldn't play Twisted Fate properly, so he couldn't engage, and then they just won randomly off of that Baron.
I mean, it's like Nuke Duck said in my interview with him. He said, like, yeah, obviously Fnatic did a great job, blah, blah, blah. He said, but if you're in that scenario, you can't win without the other team, like, doing you a favor, basically.
Yeah.
You need their help as well, basically. I think you nailed it on that. Let me think. Biggest throw of the year.
I would say that TL's playoff run was pretty high up there.
I've got one for you, Monty, that you've forgotten about already. Do you remember when GE Tigers lost to the 12th placed LPL team?
Oh yeah, I mean that was pretty massive.
That was bad, right?
Yeah, especially when Kuro like didn't play Yasuo and they just decided to play Yasuo in game 2 and it was awful. He learned how to play Yasuo later and they ran those Yasuo comps that were really cool and they played them well, but that game was terrible.
You're right. When you said the TL playoff run, the one specifically has to be the spring one, where they were up 2-0 against Cloud9. They got a Juggermore. They locked a Juggermore comp in entirely, lost the game, then lost the whole series. And C9 3-2. They literally got a Juggermore. Like, C9 couldn't even stop them getting it, and they were like one of the only teams who couldn't win with one.
Their team betting was so bad.
See, because here's the thing. I know already people must be like, what about Dignitas? It doesn't count when you're shit. Like, that whole meme of, like, Dignitas always throws at Baron, that's because you're making it like they throw. To throw, they'd have to be a good team who then made a mistake. No, that is their strategy. Their strategy is, we are ahead. Fuck it. Why not go for this Baron? Which is the exact opposite of what you should do when you have the lead. That makes no sense whatsoever. So, that doesn't count. Let me think. Oh, wait a minute. We didn't do any Westerners in our Legacy Player of the Year, Monty. Oh, we did Dyrus. I need to put another one in there. You ready? Let me think. Legacy.
We did Ambition, too.
Ambition, Dyrus. See, I feel like we've got a pop Kiwi Kid in there. How does he keep stealing checks? This guy, do you know, I'm not joking, Monty, Kiwi Kid has earned a Riot stipend for every split of LCS that has existed. This guy steals checks like no other. I don't know how he does it. I can only assume he literally has the powers of mesmerism, and that somehow when you're around him, he just has this effect on you. And yet, you know, put it this way, all I'm going to say is Dignitas members, does he ever often out of the blue suddenly say, and you're back in the room? And then you're like, what are you talking about, Kiwi? He's like, nothing at all. Anyone put some... Anyone want to go up to Nien's room and then play some Mario Party afterwards? See what I did there? Reference game incredibly on point. Meme game top notch. See, it's not even that obvious, funny. Anyway, keep going. Right, we'll do one more before we call this show to a halt, and then rightfully correct our Skrilla for the year, and then hope that Alphadraft exists in 2016. So let me think what the last one can be. Do you have any good ideas for a final category? One to send them off?
We hit a bunch of the ones that I thought were good. I think we should do some sort of social media award for like best Twitter game.
Okay. Who do you think would win that? Because here's the thing. People are going to be like, Lost Boy, because he tried to do memes, but I don't think it was that great, to be honest. Let me think. There's a few that have good Twitters, actually. I mean, I'll give you a good one. I absolutely love
Kasing's Twitter.
Is this good for the... I love Soaz's Twitter.
Soaz is hilarious. Kasing's is good, too.
For the Ryu stories, they're wicked. Yeah, yep. Those are very good. In fact, that's got to be a nominee just for the Ryu stories alone. Those are excellent. What else is out there, though? Let me think. Most people won't know it, but Edwards is pretty good. Because Edward like retweet BM shit. He'll like tweet stuff that's like openly provocative. But because it's Edward, somehow it never is taken as like an aggressive thing to say, you know? I mean, may I remind you again, I mean, it was in 2014, but Edward has just one of the funniest screenshots of all time, which is that one where they're playing a scrim against Nip and that Eamon guy is playing. And then there's just in the screenshot, in the scrim, Edward just says, Eamon, I hope you make it to LCS next split so I can take a shit on your face. And yet, somehow, that doesn't feel like toxicity, Monty, because he's such a lovable character, isn't he? It feels right. It feels like that's just banter, harmless banter, my lad, harmless banter. Meanwhile, can you remember that fucking High got fined for like doing that?
Yeah,
yeah, whatever. Anyway, but yeah, that's just what different people can get.
minorly fined. That was a slap on the wrist fine. Riot doesn't actually care about that, I don't think.
Probably not. I think the real problem with that is
in fact, I think they probably want more of it. More of that stuff. As long as there's a minor slap on the wrist, they have to do that as the league. But come on, they love
That's why. Here's the thing, Monty. What they need is they need it to get to the level of the NBA, where if you get the technical foul, it's like $10,000. But the difference is everyone who gets the technical foul makes $7 million a year. So, and the teams actually now pay those fines. The players themselves don't even pay them. So it's like really, that's there to be like, oh, we don't approve of that sort of behavior. But really, you can obviously do it if you want to. That should be the ideal world. If you can do that.
Players should really have better Twitter accounts, though. I think that's what I'm learning from this discussion.
Some people have to step their game up for sure. Like
Dexter's is pretty good.
EU is killing NA on the Twitter game.
Yeah, I like Dexter's a lot. We're not naming any NA players right now.
Is there even any NA players? Let me think.
Well, there are fewer and fewer actually these days, Thorin. I don't know. They've been kind of pushed out of their own league at this point. The NA players are dwindling.
Yeah, I can't really think of many for NA.
Especially now that PewDiePie isn't the pro player anymore.
Yeah, his was very good. Dude, there was one where, I think I might have told you this already. There was one where his girlfriend said something to him, like, I'm in the house and Cutie's still asleep upstairs. And he just replied, say that to my face, bitch. On a public Twitter, not even like DM or anything. It's true. That guy would win hands down if he was still in the league. He was a legend. Unfortunately, I think a lot of the NA people have been scared. Like, for example, if he comes on talk shows, I Will Dominate can always have some funny shit, but he knows not to say it on Twitter because of his particular past.
Yeah, I like High and Meteos' Twitters are pretty good.
All right. Yeah, the problem with Meteos is, though, he's got a parody account that's better.
That's true.
Meteos'
Highs is probably the best NA player, though.
Wow, what's he done on his account?
When you have conversations with him, it's very interesting. Like his tweets at people are usually pretty funny.
Okay. But I think that's the end of the show. Thanks to Alphadraft. It was a good year. We got a lot of money. Hopefully, if Monty's country doesn't entirely become a kind of Puritan nightmare.
But you see, Thorin, Alphadraft can continue to exist because esports is a truly global phenomenon, unlike the entire rest of the daily fantasy sports phenomenon, right? Because when most of their companies are endemic to America, NBA, MLB, and NFL, see, we can persist. We are truly the global market, right? We can hit the other places. Got Australia, got Europe. It's all fine.
Plus, here's the thing, guys. I know a lot of you out there, you're disaffected. Generation X changed things for a lot of Western culture. You've never really had your war, your thing to stand up. There's no civil rights thing that's like pressing upon you. The only thing that really threatens our Western culture at the moment is actually fundamentalist Islam and the terrorism aspect. So don't battle that, guys. You might get killed or have your head cut off on a video, and I don't want to see that. I don't know if someone had a TSM shot that happened. I'd at least think about it. Anyway, but here's a fight you can take part in. You can fight the US government to keep Alphadraft alive. Alphadraft is the rebel alliance. And see, I'm getting all you Star Wars plebs on board here. And the US government is the Empire. Oh, what's that? You mean First Order? Yeah, an actually good bad guy, you morons. The Empire. They're not some shit rip-off one. The Empire. So if you want to be like Luke Skywalker, you should probably fight the US government and play at Alphadraft. So I think that's the end. But remember, though, whatever you do next year, always do it by the numbers.